My name is Seth Green, and I lead the Baumhart Center at Loyola University Chicago. And we are thrilled to be partnering with Compass on this gathering that is about how to leverage the power of skilled volunteers, especially in this moment. Just to give you a sense of what we're going to be covering today, we're going to be briefly welcoming you and telling you a little bit about our center. And then I'm going to be turning it over for a strategic overview with Natalie Tesler, who is the Executive Director of Compass Pro Bono here in Chicago. Then we're going to hear what are 2 case studies across 4 people. We're going to hear from Greg Mooney, who is the President of Comer Science and Education, and his partner in the project, Jay Abraham, the President of the Abraham Group. We're also going to hear from Shane Caterino, who is the Managing Director of AUSL, and her partner, Marcy Goldberg. And then we're going to come to your questions. Before we jump in, let me just tell you a little bit about who we are as a center and why we're so excited to be partnering with Compass on this webinar. So we are part of a university, Loyola, that has a true leadership in this intersection of business and social purpose. Last year, the Financial Times studied over 250 business schools in the world, and they rated them on their purpose in business education. And we were absolutely thrilled to be one of 4 across the world rated excellent in 3 or more categories, along with UC Berkeley in California and 2 schools in Europe. So it has been a long part of Loyola to be focused on how do we integrate business strategy and social purpose toward our bigger mission of building a more just, humane, and sustainable world. Our center launched 2 years ago to really build on that, and we have many initiatives. There are 2 I wanted to briefly mention to all of you. The first is that we run the only MBA in the country that is cohort-based and that is entirely focused on the intersection of purpose and profit. It's called Baumhart Scholars MBA, and it's for private sector, government, and social sector leaders who are specifically getting their MBAs to drive impact and want every single class they take to integrate that impact. So if they're in marketing, they're looking at how do you build a brand that defies stereotypes instead of reinforcing them. If you're in accounting, you're hearing about sustainability metrics alongside financial metrics. The other initiative that we're really proud of is how we are raising the standards for business net large. We have an Innovator Award series that is annual, that brings together some of the top minds in our country across business and the social sector, and that ultimately rates businesses and then finds 3 across the country that are true role models. We then write a report on each one and have a number of learning opportunities for people to go deeper. We'll actually be taking one of those learning opportunities this Monday when we talk in more depth with Chobani executive Grace Zunsick about how they have set up their company for social impact amidst this COVID moment. So with that as brief introduction to who we are, it is my pleasure now to move us into the content of today, which is about how you can leverage skilled volunteers, whether you are a nonprofit that is needing those volunteers in this moment, or a for-profit that is looking for productive opportunities for your employees to share their talents, especially amidst the changes in the workplace. And so with that, let me turn it over to Natalie Tesler, who is the Executive Director of Compass Pro Bono, and she's going to walk you through an overview of both what they do and the broader field of pro bono volunteerism. Natalie?
Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you for hosting us today. As I was saying to you earlier, I've been incredibly impressed by the content that you've been offering in response to COVID-19, and we're honored to be included as part of your programming. So thank you very much. I also have to send a shout out of thanks to Shane and Greg, who are past Compass clients. They received pro bono consulting projects from Compass last year, and we loved working with them. Also, the project leaders, the volunteers, Jay and Marcy, who are here with us today, they're just examples of business professionals who have incredible talent and are looking to give back, and really were able to have such impact on the organizations that Greg and Shane run. So thank you all so much for being willing to participate today. We feel like we're always asking for more, and you guys always deliver. So thank you. So just to tell you a little bit about Compass, I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Natalie Tesler. I'm the executive director. Next slide. And Melissa Lepica, my colleague, she's also somewhere in this group. The two of us run Compass Chicago. We both come from the business world, and we both joined Compass originally as volunteers, like Marcy and Jay, working on projects. We actually were put on a project together, and now we work together as the local Compass staff. You know, I just want to start by recognizing the incredible impact that COVID-19 has had on nonprofits. I won't go through this whole list. We all understand what the impact has been, and it's definitely profound. And so Compass, which provides support to nonprofits throughout the year, is trying to adapt to be supportive, you know, in particular in this moment. So let me tell you a little bit about us. Next slide. Our mission is to activate business professionals to engage with their local nonprofits to transform communities. And that word activate is not meant to be highlighted. It's actually, we were debating what that word should be. Should it be inspire and or should it be activate, inspire and activate? The point is that we, you know, there is a hunger out there among business people to find a way to give back. That's always true. I mean, when we go out to recruit volunteers, it's amazing the people who raise their hands. So the inspiration exists. What we're doing is we are kind of harnessing that energy, identifying the people, and then deploying them to help serve nonprofits across Chicago. What we actually do is we recruit, train, and support teams of local business professionals who then provide pro bono consulting services to local nonprofits. So the team thing, I think, is key there. When we select nonprofits that we're going to help each year, and we do operate on a cohort basis. So we accept applications in the late spring. We launch projects in the fall, and they run about 9 months. We put together teams of professionals from the business community, and they work together for several months to complete a pro bono consulting project. And how do nonprofits benefit from this? Well, there's a lot of ways. I couldn't list them all here, but we are giving them access to volunteers from the top of the talent pool. You'll get a taste of that with Jay and Marcy. And like I said, those people are out there. What we're doing is we're just providing them access to those folks. And the volunteers, one of the many benefits is that they provide a really fresh and neutral and outside perspective. So nonprofits do face a lot of the same challenges that for-profits face. Some would say they face all of the same challenges and then some. But when you're working within the nonprofit sector with people who've always been within the nonprofit sector, there's a little bit of kind of this same old in terms of how they think about solving their problems or the types of activities that they can engage in. And sometimes when you bring in people who from the outside, you really open up the creative channels, and you can look at things in a whole new way. And that's, I think that's really helpful. There also can, be long-term engagement of the volunteers. So when you bring a volunteer into your organization and they get really under the hood and really connected to the work that you're doing in the community, often they stay engaged in the long term. And Jay can certainly speak to that. He's still at it in his project several months later. So sometimes those volunteers even become board members or ongoing volunteers, sometimes, contributors to the organization. So that's really nice. Just that exposure, to get a team of 9 or 10 people who are working with your organization and talking about it and inviting people to things. That's very helpful as well. It also develops a respect for the sector and for the nonprofit leaders that perhaps some of the volunteers didn't have before. They don't really understand how hard it can be and how smart the leaders are and how important the work that they're doing is to the community. But once they do a Compass project, they really understand. Next slide. This just gives you a snapshot of who Compass volunteers are. Currently, we are doing 13 projects. We recruited 140 volunteers, and amongst them are attorneys and MBAs. We recruit from the top business schools through the alumni clubs, not students, but people who have graduated. We recruit from many top companies around the city. This is just like a little sampling down at the bottom, some of the skills and industries that the volunteers come from. Next slide. And the volunteers benefit too. I mean, they're getting this opportunity to leverage their skills to give back. You know, so unlike going to work at a soup kitchen or something where they're you know, handing out meals, which is, it makes you feel good, but you don't really feel like you're bringing something that nobody else could have brought to the table. And it's very fulfilling as a volunteer to feel like you are tapping into your skills and you feel like your time can be better used. You build your professional network, develop leadership skills, especially for some of the more junior folks who join teams. And often it's a segue to very effective nonprofit board service. A lot of our volunteers come with the hope to eventually join a nonprofit board if they're not already on one. So our classic projects, which is what I was describing earlier, they run from fall to spring. Our application for nonprofits is actually opening tomorrow. And if you want to learn more about that or to join an info session that we're hosting tomorrow, I think please email me is the best way, ntessler@compasschicago.org. Maybe somebody can put that in the chat, maybe Melissa or somebody will do that for me. Thanks, Seth. The other thing that I want to make sure that you all know about is that in response to COVID, we launched some special programming just in the last about 6 weeks, different from our regular cycle. And this is what we're calling on-demand projects. So to the extent that nonprofits have the need for some quick kind of consulting projects or help with cash flow projections or help going digital, that sort of thing, we are actually matchmaking the need on the side of nonprofits with volunteers who are eager and ready to do some work in the moment. I know Marcy's actually doing one of those projects now. We've also identified thought partners for nonprofits who just feel like they need an outside ear and source of counsel to turn to as they think through some really challenging issues that they're facing right now. And again, you can email me if you're interested and we'll send you the application. Compass Connect is some programming similar to what we're doing here today, some learning opportunities. And we also do like skills for board excellence through Sorkin Center.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for that introduction and for giving everyone a sense of how they can potentially have one of these projects or volunteer through one of these projects. And we talked earlier about how this could be a vital resource right now for nonprofits that are looking to find ways to get this talent amidst great change, or for skilled professionals who are really wishing to give their talents in just the way that you described, their skills, and have more time potentially now to do so. So with that as the open invitation, what we wanted to do was go through 2 case studies of how these projects unfold to really give everyone out there a tangible understanding of how a project could actually add value to their nonprofit or to their work as a volunteer. And so we're going to start with Greg Mooney. And Greg leads the Comer Science and Education Foundation. And he's going to walk you through both their organization as well as their project and their response to COVID. Then we're going to hear from Shane, and then we're going to come over after that and hear from the volunteer side of both of those projects. Greg?
Great. Thanks so much, Seth, and thanks, Natalie, for the invitation. You know we're enthusiastic about Compass, so we're ready to jump in anytime. So,
thank you.
Just a few tidbits on the Comer Education Campus, which was launched in 2006 with the opening of the Gary Comer Youth Center, and has expanded over the past dozen years with the creation of Gary Comer College Prep and Middle School. in partnership with the Noble Network. Next slide, please. We're located in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood on Chicago's South Side, and we have a community map that illustrates that the campus is part of a broader community development initiative, which has included an affordable housing program, revitalized block clubs, the development of the Fifth Ward's first public library, and even a 2-acre farm, which produces 25,000 pounds of food annually that's sold and donated locally. But our primary focus remains centered on youth and education. Go to the next slide. There's the community map, that I referenced kind of shows where we're situated. We're a very place-based initiative, but one that's very comprehensive and responsive to the needs of the neighbors that we work with. So as I said, our primary focus remains centered on youth and education. And we have a diverse and holistic blend of programs, though I would say one of our challenges over time has been that our impact measures often lack consistency across our programs, which has made strategic analysis tough to pull off effectively. And in addition, we have many of our programs and services that are delivered through strategic partnerships with other nonprofits, and they have their own success metrics. So the very strength of our holistic approach and partnership model has also proven to be one of the more fundamental challenges as we assess results across the campus. And that in essence was the challenge that we brought to our engagement with Compass. Flip to the next slide. And these next couple slides show a little bit of the breadth of the various programming that we offer. So under the mighty leadership of our Compass team leader, Jay, who you're going to get to hear from, our team mobilized very quickly, and the project was organized under 4 distinct phases over the course of just a 6-month time horizon. And as you can quickly glean by this slide, it was robust, it was an intense agenda, but one that was really highly focused. And a couple of keynotes that I wanted to just put out on the table on the front end, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. First, it was really, I would say, a key aspect to the success of this engagement, what came from the wisdom of Compass and the Compass model, which really required that there was board engagement on the front end of the process. There was a planned and built in midway checkpoint, and then a very strong and comprehensive conclusion. So our board leadership was really engaged and involved every step of the way. And in addition to keep steady progress, and this was really through Jay's wisdom, we had weekly calls every Monday that we really stuck to very faithfully. And they would range from as short as 20 minutes to as long as an hour. But that really helped us keep pace on this agenda to make sure we were making progress, clarify steps along the way, and make sure everybody was keeping up with their homework assignments, so it wasn't all sort of crammed at the end with the final exam. The primary product, you can flip to the next slide, was built around this scorecard that was set up to help us evaluate program impact across a common set of criteria that we developed on the front end. And the criteria was developed with our mission at the forefront, but it was developed in a much more sophisticated manner than we had ever done. And there was weighted scale factors to different criteria. And then it was also developed with financial measures as well, so that the programs and their impact and their success could be weighted against the cost per student served. And then you see this is a sample, of some of the programs that we evaluated, and they, positioned programs into different quadrants that had, sort of different guidance and indication for opportunities to grow and expand in certain areas, opportunities to scale back in other areas, and then, more than anything, opportunities to have more robust discussion across our team. Just a couple final notes on kind of the way in which we did the work, which I think is particularly on everybody's mind now. The vast majority of our work with our team was done remotely, or at least that's what we called it in 2019. It was called remote back in 2019, and we had regular calls, and our working documents were shared through cloud sites so that people could stay active with it. And that, looking back on it now, I guess we've realized that we were operating as a virtual team without really naming it as such. But I really, look back to the project that we had over the course of that year as, it was really great training for this environment that that we're operating in right now. So with that, I'll wrap up and turn it over to the next team.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Greg, for sharing one example of how Compass had value for you and how the skilled volunteerism allowed you to ultimately develop the scorecard and have that kind of assessment from a metric level of your work. Shane, we're going to come to you now because you worked with another team and you did it for a different organization, AUSL. So tell us about AUSL and then tell us about, how you endeavored your project. And let me unmute. There we go. Yes, that is on me. I am saying, tell us all about, and yet I have not unmuted to make that possible.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Seth. Shane Caterino, AUSL, part of the management team at the organization. Definitely want to thank Natalie over at Compass and Seth for bringing this opportunity for us. I noticed a lot of our partners are on the call as well, so I definitely want to shout out them and thank you for joining this call. I think we can just jump into the next slide. This was a really inspirational, invigorating project and process that we went through at AUSL. So I definitely want to. Every time someone tells me about Compass or they want a testimonial, I'm like, I am the first person to rave about it because it was a totally transformative, I think, experience for us, and want to really call out, not going to echo too much of what Greg said, but maybe call out things that were really specific to what happened in our network. Quickly, so we're a nonprofit school management organization, and we're really focused on ensuring that students in our schools get a high quality education wherever they are, particularly in the neighborhood schools. So we're a partner with the Chicago Public Schools, and we manage 31 CPS schools and get to serve 16,000 students daily. And that means 16,000 students daily, even right now during COVID. Part of our model is also the Chicago Teacher Residency. We train teachers for CPS, and we work closely with university partners who go through a year-long university master's level program and also get a one-year intensive clinical experience in a classroom. So that is actually still continuing now. The clinical experience is now remote, where teachers the mentor teachers are working with their residents remotely, supporting the teachers right now and still connecting with their students. We'll be graduating another cohort in June, and that our alumni is just fantastic. A lot of them have been principals, continuing as teacher leaders, as mentors, and CPS. I want to take this moment because I can right now, that Chance the Rapper actually recognized 2 of our resident grads last week. If you were on Instagram last week and watched his Twilight Awards and he was recognizing CPS students, 2 of them were actually graduates of our residency program. So really excited about the work that we do here and where we place our teachers in AUSL network schools. A third area of our work is advisory services. It was really started probably about 12-ish years ago. When people around the country were starting to, learn about what we were doing around school management, teacher practices, leadership development, they started to, to kind of explore, ask us what we were doing. So since then, we've created a department that's really focused on working with other districts around the country around their needs. Some of our current clients are in Illinois, Nevada, Texas, in a growing area. And so all this, and we'll go to the next slide. Compass, I guess it was just a year ago that we did this engagement. It really feels like it was a long time ago. And I feel like Marcy is just such a part, of the family. And it's just so great to see her. I mean, it was a very intense experience, and it actually started even at the recruitment stage, if you recall. So Compass, when Natalie was talking about bringing people together, part of that is providing almost, this opportunity for volunteers to come and meet with organizations. And I think it might be our first or second time that we met, and we were clawing for volunteers to join our project. It was such a great vibe, and we could tell that we could really work together. So this idea of rapport and the matching, I mean, Natalie, that fantastic. It was like a perfect match with Marcy and then the team that she selected and working with us. Part of when we did the application, so it was an application process, as Natalie mentioned. So we did it the summer before, and we worked with our board members to really help identify, well, what are those pain points that we think that these skilled volunteers could help us with. And so we work closely with our board chair, we work with our marketing committee to really think about, well, what is this application that we really want the project team to focus on. So as Greg was saying, the board engagement, that was another reason why that this has become something that the result of the project is really part of our fabric and what we do at AUSL now, which is having that board leadership, board alignment. So we really wanted to focus on a strategic marketing plan. In our 18, 19 years, this idea of a lack of consistent language in how we talk about ourselves internally, externally, that was something that we've struggled with. So this was a great, opportunity step back for Marcy and team to, kind of look at everything and help us rethink how we talk about ourselves and what we should prioritize in talking about ourselves. And I think many organizations would agree that low awareness of their mission and their work and their activities, it's not a matter of, being a competitive space, but it's just, how do we generate more awareness amongst influencers, be it donors, be it other folks, be it community partners, be it, other, influential folks who really, they need to be part of our mission to help work with the students that we get to work with. So we needed a strategic marketing plan. So Marcy and team, developed we're going to work on a communication statement and marketing plan. That's what we're committed to. The process, 8 months. And when I say it moved quickly, it moved quickly. I mean, Marcy, I'm going to say her name like 20 times. I mean, fantastic. She led her team, but then she also led us in terms of the things that we could focus on, but not in a way that was, it was very much in a partner. Like we were partners in this work. So we met weekly, going through all the different elements of the project plan that she and the team came up with. And then, got into the schools, met with principals, met with teachers, and met with board members to really dig into the work so that after the 8 months, after our weekly meetings of check-ins, they came back with a communication statement and a marketing plan. Check. However, this is like the fun part. They even gave us more. Like, we didn't ask for this. And they're like, we're so committed. We saw that there were these other things that you might want to work on. And, they gave us some plans around thought leadership, PR communications and digital marketing. Fantastic. I mean, so we're walking into this year or last year in July, going into a new fiscal year with all these great plans, alignment with the board, and alignment even with the organization, because part of the process with the team is really engaging the other influencers in your organization to help make sure the project is sustained. So that work, really, it's not done, it's still living today. And we had such a fantastic experience. And I think if we can jump to the next slide, and that as far as it's pertinent to COVID, because of the work that Marcy and team did, it really helped us really, pivot to what we need to be getting out to our stakeholders right now. A lot of it being about the, the mission moments that are happening in the schools, and what students are facing, and how our partners and how what we're trying to do to reach and help families right now. Where we've had a focus, for example, in recruiting for teacher residents in the next cohort, we've tried to expand some of that, online communications to be more comprehensive. I'll note another area is leveraging, and again, I think Greg has noticed, like, as we're all working remotely now and being in this world, a lot of the network schools have activated their social media accounts or have amplified their social media accounts. So that's actually provided us an opportunity to connect with schools and share out some of the work that we're doing, and also being able to share that information, share what they're doing at the school-based level, on our social networks. And then also with advisory services, it's giving us this time to focus on developing a new website to reach more clients nationally. So that's, I think in a nutshell, what the project did for us, and it really, has affected how we do the work today. And it's a living plan. We're still using it and still really activating aspects of the project, and just had a fantastic experience with them.
Well, thank you so much, Shane, for sharing your journey. And we're now going to move from the case studies of the impact side to the case studies of the volunteer side. So what was it like to lead the team that was consulting, and what value ultimately did you as volunteers in this skilled moment receive? And so, Jay, we're going to start with you, and this is going to bring us back to the Comer example where Jay was on the other side of that relationship, helping them to get to the scorecard that Greg presented earlier. Jay?
Thank you, Seth, and thank you, Natalie and Greg, for all the nice things you said. I've had one of the things that we've, Natalie asked, is to let you guys know about what my experience was before starting this, and my experience during the engagement. So I've had a fairly eclectic experience, starting with the U.S. Navy Submarine Service, and then going into consulting, where I was head of an office for the Mitchell-Madison Consulting Group, a strategy consulting practice. And then I went off on my own, and while I still did consulting, more of the projects I was doing were troubleshooting organizations, stepping in as an executive, a temporary executive, and massive project implementations. I spent a lot of years on the road, Monday through Friday, and I was starting to try to wean back and do something more local. In 2016, I became Chief Operating Officer of a B2B e-commerce startup here in Chicago, which was sold in 2018. So I had time on my hand at that time, and I heard about Compass Pro Bono through H.E. Carney. And I wasn't ready to go back into full-time, high-pressure consulting. And I wanted, and this looked like a perfect way to get involved and be local and be a meaningful part of helping a nonprofit, broader than just contributing money, which I've done for a long time, or just one-off engagements where I've been asked to help, pick up trash, lead dinner, and it didn't have that same meaningful impact. And Compass allowed me to use my own skill set to help an organization, which is not something that you typically get this experience. You're basically doing the same thing everybody else is doing. I was a little skeptical, as I tried this before on a one-to-one basis with some autism organizations that a friend of mine had asked me to get involved with, and where I had evaluated their finances and given suggestions, but I never heard anything back. But in this particular case with Gary Comer and the way that Compass had set up the engagement, Gary Comer Youth Center and their board were very engaged. They were willing to meet weekly. They were willing to take the advice and do the homework, as Greg said, because as we dug into a lot of the things that we're asked to do, I found out that they didn't really have the infrastructure or the data that would allow us to do a lot of the things. So they had to do a lot of work to kind of redo things on the fly. For example, their financials weren't geared to evaluate programs per se. And so they had to go back through and start evaluating that. the first thing that Greg had asked us to do was we should evaluate partners. And we're going through and we're trying to identify, well, what's the list of partners? And as they worked on identifying that one list of partners, it became massive, and we started asking questions. Well, what is a partner exactly? And it turned out that they had definitions of partners who were strategic partners, who were funding partners, who were actually partners on the program side. And then we had to ask those clarifying questions, and they worked it through themselves to come to the point that we could come out something concrete that we could wrap our hands on and evaluate. The real advantage for me coming out of this was not only was I able to understand the youth center and the challenges their clients, the actual youth, were imposing, not from just the perspective of we're giving a consulting agreement, but we got to participate in their career day seminar. I got to participate in a workshop they were having with their students where they were writing letters to the new mayor, Lori Lightfoot, and a team that I was sitting at the table were talking about was the issue of safety in the neighborhood. And I got to really feel and understand some of the issues where the youth were talking about how they couldn't use the parks that were right next to the Compass Center or their homes because they were so dangerous. The police would not go into those areas for a very long time. So it got to me, I got a much better feel than just contributing money, than just doing a one-off volunteer event. I got to really understand them. The other side, from my perspective, is working with a team. It was some ways a big change because the teams that I'd done during my consulting projects were all trained consultants, and they were fairly familiar with the experience and how to do consulting. In this case, a lot of the teams were all business professionals. They were lawyers. There are people who worked in private equity or banking or technology. And those were things that I needed to teach them some basic consulting skills, and they brought to their the team their expertise, which would help us, for example, when we were looking at the partnerships with the Gary Comer, we'd have the lawyer look at the risk associated with the agreements. That our marketing person was able to come up with how do we evaluate the various programs and the criteria, and how do we select which criteria. We use some marketing techniques to come out and pick those things. There was a fairly wide age difference in the volunteers that were on my team. We had people who were just graduated a couple of years ago from college, and we had a few people who were in the elderly side, and one person who was in the 80s. So it was pretty interesting to see the dynamic of how everybody was learning from each other. My particular learnings were, there were a lot of things that the latest technology on internet-based protocols that you can use to do a lot of things that I would typically pick up a phone and try to coordinate. Things like setting up a meeting using an app called Doodle, which I've now subsequently used in a lot of different cases for my personal stuff as well as business stuff. And just getting more familiarity with the Google suite of shared documents as opposed to what I'd previously done on Microsoft Office. So it was a very good, much of a learning experience to me, as well as something that I could give back to a nonprofit in this area. And I also think that the initiative that Compass has launched now for nonprofits to get individual sounding boards and one-off projects is going to help people in this COVID era. I think it is going to be a challenge for some of the aspects of what Compass Pro Bono has with terms of the networking and getting the camaraderie with the volunteers. But I think we've been fairly effective with our Zoom calls and the team I'm currently working on Compass. And I'm still working with Gary Comer on an individual basis, and I've attended their management meetings in person, and lately it's been on the phone. But I think there's a lot that skilled volunteers can bring to professionals in this, to nonprofits in this era.
Thank you so much, Jay, for those insights. And we're now going to move on to a second volunteer, Marcy Goldberg, who worked with AUSL, and we're going to hear her story of skilled volunteerism. Marcy?
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Marcy Goldberg. Thanks so much for having me. I had working with Shane and AUSL and continue to have a fantastic experience with Compass, so I'm happy to spread the word about it. So my background, I am president and founder of K-12 Market Advisors. We offer marketing and business strategy to educational organizations, those that create products and services for schools. So for students, teachers, and administrators in K-12 schools. I've spent the last 20 years in business, technology, and education, holding leadership and advisor roles in the educational technology space. So I chose to participate in the Compass Skilled Volunteer Opportunity. I was looking for a volunteer opportunity where I could make a bigger and more long-lasting impact using my unique skills. I do a lot on the local level. I live in the suburbs. I was looking to get more involved in the city of Chicago. And I heard about Compass through the Wharton Alumni Network, of which I did get an MBA from Wharton. And I got a lot out of it. I loved the experience and there were so many benefits that I didn't expect to get. So the first, I loved working with AUSL, the collaboration, the ability to go really deep and get involved in an organization and contribute some unique skills perhaps they didn't have or they had, but just were so flat out busy running school that they didn't have time to give attention to. Our whole team was very passionate about AUSL's mission and the students in the schools that it served, and we had the opportunity to go to the schools and see those adorable kids and really feel the impact of our work. So it was just such a great opportunity to get to know an organization that we otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to get to know so deeply. A big highlight for us, and I say us, our team, we feel like we had the best team. We had 9 people. Similar to Jay, our team was very diverse. They ranged in age from 25 to 69, living as far south as Hyde Park, as far north as the northern suburbs. We had consultants, attorneys, marketing leaders, stay-at-home moms, some people earlier in their career, some who are more established, all with very different perspectives, experiences, and at different life stages. And it's, we got the team and I thought, oh boy, how are we going to bring all of us together? And we really gelled, and we learned so much and shared so much with each other, both within the project, professional skills, and, personal life with somebody having a baby, somebody getting a job and moving out of state. It was, it was real life as well. And the learning wasn't just the more experienced people teaching the younger. I mean, we had some of we was very deliberate in having some of the people who were earlier in their career who had some great skills, for example, in creating PowerPoint slides or in technology, train some of the more experienced people that weren't quite at that same level. So there was a lot of sharing going both ways. And it was really fun leading a team where I got to know people I hadn't met before and really find their strengths and leverage their strengths to help AUSL. And then I would say on a third point that I don't think anyone said yet, it is just the Compass volunteer community is a great community. I have been surprised and very energized, and it's been very rewarding to meet like-minded people who are willing to give of their time. I mean, the Compass community, these people are busy. They work, they have families. You hear about what's going on and you think, wow, how do they have time to do this? But, that saying that you give the busiest people more they're more likely to get it done. And I think those are the type of volunteers that Compass gets. So for the nonprofits out there, I want to make the point, Natalie asked me, how is this different from being a paid consultant? So for the nonprofits out there that are considering working with Compass, know that as a project leader, I never approach this differently. I mean, I have a consulting business, and I absolutely approached AUSL with the same way that I would approach my consulting clients or my paying clients in terms of offering a high level of service. I would say that what was maybe different is the high level of appreciation and gratitude that AUSL showered on us as a thank you. So I guess, you know, parting thoughts here is, I think Natalie said it earlier, nonprofits have so much in common with for-profits in that they offer a product or service, they have clients and customers, they have operations and distribution, they need marketing, they need, you know, to be financially responsible, there's still people management. So the core skills that nonprofits need to be successful are very much what skilled volunteers or professionals have. And so Compass does such a great job marrying these professionals with these skills to nonprofits that need it. If you're interested in donating your time and energy, and certainly in the COVID-19 world that we live in today, there's more demand than ever. So I highly recommend turning to Compass for either if you're a nonprofit or you're looking to volunteer and are not sure how.
Well, thank you, Marcy. And we have about 10 minutes now for questions, and there have already been quite a few that have come to our group over chat. And so, Natalie, I want to start with you because quite a few of the questions are in your direction. Can you give us a snapshot of what are the major pro bono consulting desires of nonprofits? Do they categorize into marketing, into impact measurement? Give us kind of a high-level snapshot of that, and then we have some other power round questions for the rest of the group.
Okay, yes, great. So, oh man, there's a sort of unmade bed in my background, so I'm gonna shift that over.
Terrible, we just assume everyone makes their bed every morning. What a disappointment.
I'm gonna blame
shocking.
my son, his 14-year-old son, yes.
I assure you I have this, you know, window that covers anything behind me because it's spotless behind me.
Very smart. So, you know, when a nonprofit applies for a Compass project, they actually have to select from among 7 service lines that we offer. And each service line is designed to tackle a sort of very common and major strategic challenge that many nonprofits have. And actually often nonprofits say to us that the hardest part of the application was choosing which service line to apply for. So, you know, today we have represented strategic marketing, which is the project AUSL did. For Gary Comer, we did a partnerships and collaborations project. Some other service lines include board development, funding strategies. You know, that often we will look at an earned income opportunity for a nonprofit, a way that they're looking to generate their own internal revenue, and we can evaluate that, refine it, look at some different opportunities for different earned revenue streams, and write a business plan around it. Help weed out bad ideas, help bolster good ideas. Let's see, what am I forgetting? Well, this year we're offering something new called, oh my gosh, I'm spacing on the name, but it's a decision support. So in light of COVID, we will be doing a project that will help make decisions along the way, something that's not as fixed and deep as like a strategic marketing project is, but more have extra bandwidth available to solve different challenges that might not be foreseen at the beginning of the project. So hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome, and that gives a good sense of what is possible for the nonprofits out there that may want to partner. Let me come back to both our nonprofit leaders and our volunteers and ask an open-ended question, which is, as I heard about the projects, you know, there is really a level of depth that you need to go into in order to provide meaningful advice. And it's often at the intersection of the business strategy, but also the program strategy. So as I think about that scorecard, you know, there's some aspects of metrics that you can put easily into numbers. There are others that Gary Comer is seeking to ultimately impact that are harder to quantify, especially in a certain time frame. In your work, Shane, you know, you're developing communications, and those communications ultimately tell the story of your brand. They tell who you're serving. You know, there's a lot of content there that is, I'm sure, drawing tremendously on the program expertise. And I would imagine, just having, you know, led a nonprofit for 7 years, there are tension points between, you know, what the outside eyes are seeing from their business acumen and what the inside eyes are seeing from social work and from direct service and from being on the ground. And I'm just curious, high level, how do you navigate through that? And how do you, as volunteers, find a way to successfully offer advice while being humble? And at the same time, as organizations, hear that advice while acknowledging that you have additional information or expertise that you need to bring to the equation. And it's open-ended. We'll do it popcorn style. So whoever pops first, you can, you know, just go for it or raise your hands.
Well,
Start us out.
Yeah, I have a thought on that. So actually picking up off of something that Marcy said, Jay absolutely approached our project, I believe, the way he would any, you know, consulting assignment. And it started at the very beginning. I'll never forget one of the first meetings. He said, I think your scope is wrong. You know, you want to focus on measuring your partners, but how can we effectively help you measure partners if we don't take a look at all of your programs? You know, and my initial reaction was, typical consultants, you know, is wants to double the scope of this project, so you know he can double his fee. I've seen this rodeo before, you know. And then all of a sudden I did the math in my head, and I was like, okay, if the fee is zero and you double it, we're still at zero. So I said, you know, fire away. Let's have at it. And so, but that from your question, Seth, about tension. It definitely amped up the intensity of the project and the assignments and the demands and sort of the pace that we had to keep up with. And I would say that Jay did a particularly good job of leaning into his team so that different members of the team that had more familiarity with our type of work and program were able to sort of make some of these translations. But it didn't really prevent him from pushing us and staying disciplined. I'll give a specific. That scorecard, we came up with all kinds of reasons why, you know, this wouldn't really be the perfect comparison of X, Y, and Z. And it was a little bit of like, yeah, that's fine, but we've got to get to a measurement. We've got to, and Jay did a masterful job of continuing to push us forward so that, you know, that old adage of you know, not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, that completely played out in our project.
Yeah, and I'll also just add, I mean, I think you hear Greg and I talking and lauding our project managers, you know, Marcy and Jay. I mean, they truly did approach this as very much about a partnership. And I can appreciate what Greg is saying is that, you know, bringing the professionalism as they would do in their own, you know, their own business. And you felt it. And it really was about the relationship and the partnership and the quality. And, you know, as I'm sure as Greg is hires people too, or brings to the organization, it's about like, you know, that people matter. And it was a great partnership. And I think Natalie and just like the people that she's bringing in to be these volunteers, it's really going deep into both matching their skill set and then their passion. And then being the perfect matchmaker in pairing us with these organizations, with the organizations and the volunteers. I feel like it's really unique. And I've worked in, different, volunteer capacities as well. And I really feel like this is special. This is really different.
Yes.
Well, so Joe, maybe we can come to you. Perfect. Yeah, you were already on the spot, but let me add a question to you in addition to what you're about to say, which is, how did you prepare for the transition? Because, you had done a lot of consulting, but in a very different context. And I'm just curious how you readied yourself for consulting that obviously still included a lot of the same tools, but was in a very different setting that you may not have had as much lived experience or knowledge about.
Good question.
I think, that's surprising in that it isn't actually that much different. I think the distinction between a for-profit consulting and a not-for-profit consulting is really in what are the metrics that you measure success on. And other than that, everybody is working, they're committed to doing what they want to do. They may just have a little less expertise in terms of business, in terms of saying, what are the goals that we're trying to do? And I think that's, as Greg was talking about, that was one of the challenges in our project, which was, when we said, what are the criteria? Our team came up with a group of 10 criteria that we thought they could use based on interviewing both their the youths in the things, some of the alumni from the programs, the staff members and the board members. And we said, here's what we heard. They added some other criteria, they reworded some things, and we ended up having like 40 criteria to evaluate. And I said, you guys have to come to something smaller than that. And we surveyed them using some forced decision making, and they came up with a top 7 criteria to how to evaluate programs. Now, I would have preferred a lot of those criteria to be quantitative, but they didn't have the data to support that. They didn't have the data to say, because these youth went through these specific programs, they graduated college. And we said, okay, that's fine for now, but what are your impressions? What do you think your successful programs are, and why are they successful? And so as we started coming up with that, and we said, okay, we think providing mentorship is a valuable skill. So then we said, I talked them through to say, okay, what's the difference between providing high mentorship to your youth to low mentorship? And so they came up with criteria so we could have a 1 through 5 qualitative ranking, but it allows you to say, okay, this program gives you a 5 in mentorship because of the way our counselors can work with the students. And so other the criteria, what we tried to do was make qualitative criteria into some way that it could be quantitative, and it may just be enough words to be able to say, okay, well, if you wanted to give career exposure, you exposed a student to 3 careers versus 5, that's a way to break it out. Or you gave in-depth career exposure to one person by giving job shadowing. That's different than just talking to them about a career. And so that's the way they started looking at it. And it was a challenge because they all had different ideas, but they came down to it and they picked it. And I think I told them the most important thing is don't worry. Don't be worried that it's not perfect, because you can always iterate. And as long as you continue to evolve this, it should not be a one and done thing. It should be something you live with.
Well, we are at time, but I cannot say thank you enough to all of our panelists. Natalie, what you've built in Compass is obviously inspiring a lot of people, and what hopefully people out there know is that they can be part of it. And so I'm really grateful, especially in moments like this where nonprofits are undergoing dramatic changes, that they have a team like yours to rely on, volunteers like Jay and Marcy, and that we have leaders like Shane and Greg to move the social sector forward. So thanks to everyone for joining, and we hope that you find ways to integrate this into your strategies during this unprecedented moment. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you so much. Thanks to the volunteers. They get the credit.